If you're a mobile developer, you know this feeling all too well. You look for interview prep, and it's just a sea of resources for back-end system design. But for mobile, it can feel like you're completely on your own. Well, we're going to change that. Let's dive in and build a rock-solid game plan for what is, let's be honest, one of the toughest interviews you'll face.
I mean, seriously, think about that question. How in the world are you supposed to design a whole mobile app in 45 minutes? They give you this super vague idea, a whiteboard, and a clock that just seems to be ticking faster and faster. It feels impossible, right?
And yeah, it absolutely is the core challenge. But here's the secret. They don't expect a perfect, bug-free, ready-to-ship app. No way. The real goal is to show them how you think. And the key to doing that, especially under all that pressure, is having a solid, repeatable strategy you can fall back on.
So here's our roadmap. First, we're going to cover the unspoken rules of the game, what's really going on in that room. Then, I'm going to give you a powerful 8-step plan to structure your entire answer. After that, we'll look at how to actually apply it, going from the big picture all the way down to the nitty-gritty details. And finally, we'll talk about the things you can do to truly stand out from the crowd.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the unspoken interview rules. Because honestly, understanding the format and what the interviewer is actually looking for is half the battle won right there.
Now, take a look at how that 45 minutes actually breaks down. You've got intros, then you spend time just figuring out what you're even supposed to build. When you subtract all that out, you're left with this core block of just 25, maybe 30 minutes. That is your entire window to design the solution, and trust me, it goes by in a flash. And in that tiny window, this is what they're watching for. Notice how it's not just about raw technical skill. Can you handle a problem that's not perfectly defined? Can you explain your thought process out loud? And maybe most importantly, can you explain why you chose solution A instead of solution B? Your communication skills are just as critical as your coding skills here.
And that's exactly where this comes in. Let's get into Section 2, the 8-step answer plan. Think of this as the framework that's going to help you take back control of that 30-minute block. It ensures your communication is just as structured and clear as your technical design.
You know, without a plan, it's so easy to get lost in the weeds or to start rambling or maybe focus on a tiny detail that doesn't really matter. A systematic approach, though, that changes everything. It turns that interview anxiety into real confidence because you know exactly what your next step is. You're just methodically building your design piece by piece. And here it is. This is your blueprint. First, you start broad. Clarify the business idea and define the actual requirements. You have to understand the problem before you can solve it. Then you move into the architecture, the high-level system design, the API, and the client-side design. And finally, you zoom all the way in by detailing one specific module and discussing a complex edge case. Following these steps, in this order, is absolutely key.
All right, let's move into Section 3 and see how this actually works in practice. How do you apply this framework, building your solution layer by layer from those huge architectural decisions all the way down to the details of the app itself? So, we're at step 4 of our plan, and this is probably the first major decision you have to make. Before you even think about an API endpoint or a UI screen, you have to draw a line in the sand. What logic and data live on the backend server, and what is the mobile client responsible for? This single decision is going to shape everything that comes after it. Now we're at step 6, designing the client side. A layered architecture like this is a fantastic way to keep your design clean and organized. Just think of it like a stack. Way down at the bottom, you have the data layer, which is talking to the network or a local database. That data then flows up through the service, business, and presentation layers, getting transformed and prepared at each step until it finally hits the UI layer at the very top. That's what the user actually sees and touches. This brings us to step 7, detailing a specific module. And this is where you really prove you're an architect, not just a coder. See, you don't just pick a pattern and say, I'll use Redux. A great candidate says, I'm considering Redux, and here's why. You talk about the pros, like how it's great for maintainability. But then you also talk about the cons, like how a really huge state can create performance problems. Discussing trade-offs like this shows a much deeper level of understanding. Okay, so you've nailed the technical design. You've followed the plan, you've discussed trade-offs. So how do you push yourself over the top? How do you go from being a good candidate to being a great one? That's what our final section is all about, how to truly stand out. It really all boils down to one thing. You have to make your thought process visible. You should be constantly narrating what you're thinking, basically using the whiteboard as an extension of your brain. Remember, the goal isn't to magically guess the one right answer. The goal is to show the interviewer how you arrive at a good answer by considering different options and making smart choices. When you do that, the interview stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like a collaborative design session.
And this right here, this is a master-level strategy, especially for step 8, discussing a complex case. Instead of just waiting for the interviewer to throw a tricky problem at you, have one ready in your back pocket. Think about a really tough issue you've actually solved in a past job, like handling offline mode or caching images efficiently. Then you can gently steer the conversation towards that topic. It lets you play on your home turf and show off your deepest expertise.
So we'll end with this question for you. Before your next interview, don't just grind out coding problems. Sit down and really think about this. What is that one complex, real-world mobile problem that you understand inside and out? Because having that answer ready to go, well, that might just be the single most important piece of prep you do.